like I said, welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. This is part of the ONE Agritech project, which has been supported by Scotland Food and Drink Partnership, Aberdeenshire Council and Opportunity North East. And it is being delivered by Jim Booth and George Noble from SAOS and Kirsten and myself on behalf of SAC Consulting. So the project has been running for a wee while now. It was kicked off earlier in 2022, and the aims of the project is really to demonstrate and validate the benefits of practical applications of smart, innovative technology to farmers as a route to improve sustainability for Scottish farms, and it's also really to look at how the tech companies that there is in the Northeast can also support and get involved in the farming community and hopefully provide some of the solutions that we're finding in handling data that is being driven by our businesses. We've got a lot of really innovative tech companies in the Northeast and in Aberdeen, and with the oil industry maybe not being quite so lucrative as it once was, they're looking for ways to move into different industries. So it's great to have them on board with us, and they've been out to some of the farms and seen what's going on. So the project so far, we've got two demo farms, which you might have heard about. We've got Tulloch Farms at Lawrence Kirk, which is 800 hectares, a mix of arable and grassland with 220 suckler cows as well. They're quite an innovative business, and they're looking at reducing tillage in their arable crops and reducing inputs as well, and using some new technology towards that. They're probably one of the only places in Scotland that's doing strip till broccoli, and using cover crops to prepare the soil for a broccoli crop. And also Ian, the farm manager there, is very into grazing winter cereals, with most of these winter cereals now getting grazed to some extent. And then we've got Andrew and Daniel Robertson at Tittabooty, Tarland. They're at 384 hectares, of which 257 is in arable and rotational grass. The rest are 127 hectares are off grazing and running 180 suckler cows and 600 ewes. And their system, all their stock are EID'd, and they're using carbon cameras and weigh cells on their feeders and things to give them some extra information on what's going on. So the project has been running for a wee while. So what's happened so far, we've had a launch conference March 2022. We've had an open day in each of the farms to introduce the farms. We're on a webinar in December, which was really well attended, looking at Agri-Tech on my farm, and with 4 farmers for the Northeast displaying or putting across what they were using, what tech they were using in the farm and the benefits that had. We've got tonight's webinar, which is looking at grass and using the tech and tools for it. Some of you have responded to our farmer survey, which has been ongoing, and the results for that will be coming out soon. Really good response to that. There's a newsletter about to come out just with what's happening with the project and a bit of an update. And we've also got a management group to try and kind of influence the project on the different types of things we should be looking at. And it's up to the, well, it's due to them that we've had these 2 webinars, which so far, hopefully tonight will be a success, but the first one certainly was a success. So and on the farms, we've done a bit of baseline benchmarking. So looking at the farm bench stuff, costings for the different enterprises. They've got a LoRaWAN network installed on both the farms, so that's a It's like an internet on the farm that can send small pockets of data between sensors. We've got a few different sensors deployed on the farm looking at different bits and pieces. We're also quite lucky that Richie have helped us and loaned us beef monitors to put on both the farms at the moment, and there's also an auto drafter sitting on one of the farms at the minute as well. So quite a few things going on at the moment, and we're just trying to build up a picture from the data, the kind of information that we can use on the back of that. So back to tonight's speakers. We've got 3 speakers this evening. We've got Poppy Frater, who's a sheep and grassland specialist with SAC Consulting. And part of her work is looking at restructuring businesses to increase profitability and sustainability and increase animal welfare. And she's also doing a PhD in the moment on mob grazing and the benefits to soil health. So she's going to speak about grassland and kind of an introduction to some of the tech that maybe that there is there as well. We've also got Jamie Leslie, who's a beef, sheep and cattle farmer from Shetland. He's won the Farmers Weekly Mixed Farmer of the Year for 2022 and is really keen on using a bit of tech and a bit of measuring and to increase his grassland management and improve his performance and probably one of the harshest areas to try and farm in. So we've got a few insights from him this evening, and then we've got Ross Robertson, who's head of mixed farming at Agri-EPI, and who's going to give us a bit of an update on some of the tech that is out there for use on grassland that can be used. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we kick off. Any questions that you've got, please put them in the Q&A that is seen by us, and we'll try and go through as many questions as we can at the end. So we'll try and come back to them at the end. The chat that there is there, anybody can put anything in the chat and everybody can see that. So just so that you know, and then we will go from there. So Poppy, I'll stop sharing my screen, and if you can share your screen, and we'll make a start the speakers. Just a reminder that tonight is being recorded as well, so that it will be able to be seen on catch up. If that's the way you want, it'll be posted on the project website. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, David. Is my screen sharing okay? Perfect.
Perfect.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. So thanks for that. Yeah, I hope people won't be disappointed in that we're not really going to go into depth on the whole wealth of technology that there is available to improve grassland production. You know, I think we've seen huge success with things like variable rate lime application, nutrient applications. I was looking at a cool tool earlier, looking at fungi to bacterial ratios. And even like new genetics in grassland, that's technology in action, really. We're not really going into the depths of how to grow more grass. However, and I'd be interested if the other speakers agree, but I see the greatest opportunity is in how not growing more, but how we can utilize what we do grow that bit better. And I think there's great opportunity in Scotland in that area. So yeah, because grass, we know it's becoming ever more challenging to manage in this erratic climate. But what can we do to improve the management of this valuable resource? I used to be really annoying. About 5 or so years ago, I ran a series of meetings across the country. And in a bid to get people thinking and talking, I would start the day by asking the group what the average wheat yield is in the UK and what the average grass yield is in the UK. And as you can see, this was the sort of answers I would get. So on the wheat side, people weren't too far off, whereas on the grass side, people just didn't know. And I was super annoying because I didn't know either. And my point was, they're quite, quite well related species, but we just don't treat them the same. For various reasons, we don't harvest them the same. And that's just, we just don't see grass as a crop. And that's a problem. And that's a weakness in the way we manage it. And without this ability to measure and understand the yield of grass, how can we plan to improve utilisation? How do we know whether a farming strategy is optimised for the potential of your farm? And some even suggested, well, in fact, actually, we should be going beyond that. What's the equivalence of wheat yield? It's meat yield. And I 100% agree. Kilos of live weight per hectare, kilos of dead weight per hectare, that is the equivalence. But understanding grass yield alone just helps us hone in on the plant side of the equation before we consider all the other things that go into impacting the meat yield, animal health, genetics and behavior, etc. So I think there's huge value to us understanding the yield of grass that bit better. A couple of years later, we had this, there was Forage for Knowledge, which was a service provided by AHDB. And then there is also Grass-Check GB. And this is a great service in that they collect grass growth data alongside quality data over a number of farms across the UK. So we can have a bit of a gauge of grass yield. We can have a bit of an understanding as to what's happening through the year. So you can see in the graph here, the 2022 grass growth curve, what happened last year on dairy farms and sheep farms, what the 3-year average is for that data set. We can also hone in a bit on Scotland and see what the grass growth pattern was. And as we go into this growing season, that data will be there available on a weekly basis. And this is a good starting point, and I would encourage everybody to check the website to look for farms nearby and see what their figures are doing. The other thing that they're adding on is this ability to forecast a couple of weeks in advance as well. So they're using soil moisture data, weather data to gauge what's going on into the future, because that really does help make decisions whether you need to sell lambs sooner or a destock or buy in feed or fertilizer. All these sort of predictions just help inform those decisions. And this kind of helped go a little way to help answering my question. So you can see last year, in fact, quite nice to see, Scotland was top of the leadership board with the highest yield in 2022 compared to Wales, Northern England and Southern England. So you can see the impact that dry weather had as we went further south. And perhaps this gives us a little bit more emphasis on the need to manage grass better in Scotland as well, as we can see that's going to be our strength as well. Grass-based meat production is our strength into the future. So like I say, more information available on the website, worth a look. I would say that, is this representative of all the farms in these different areas? I would probably say not. I'd probably say it's skewed, and I don't think Grass-Check would take any issue with me saying this, but it would be skewed to perhaps well, let's just say the hill type farmers are probably not included in that data set. And so Jamie, who you'll hear from later on, he's part of a discussion group, and the average for that group is around 6.5 tonnes of dry matter to the hectare, just to kind of put that into a perspective there. But it gives us a guide, and it gives us an understanding as to where grass growth is going. And like I say, we're not selling grass, we're selling meat. So grass yield is one thing, and growing more of it is always a good thing because it gives you more potential as to what you can sell, but it's grass used that is related to profitability. So this is quite nicely shown on this Chugask data from Ireland, which shows each of these dots is a farm. You can see that the grass used in tonnes of dry matter to the hectare, and that quite nice association with net profitability. And as this data said, the farm net profit was €617 higher per hectare in the top farms, 40% higher than the average. So it's grass used, not grass grown, that drives profitability. So that brings me to, if I can measure grass, what can I do with that information? And that brings me to introduce this concept called feed budgeting. So feed budgeting, same as what's done in the shed, perhaps. You're taking account of what feed you have and what feed you need, and just seeing how those two sides of the equation match. So I just thought I'd quickly demonstrate feed budgeting with this quite nice and simple QMS app. So there we go. So in this grazing calculator, it's quite nice, just available online. I'm just going to click on sheep for my example, just show my bias there. And what you do is you enter in a name for the group. So I put in twin ewes. You might enter in what sort of stage they're at. So I'll put these are in mid-pregnancy, what sort of weight they are, and what the mob size is. And what this part of the app does is it tells you how many kilos of dry matter they require per day. Okay, and then also it tells me for that group of 250 ewes, how many kilos that group require per day. So that's great. That's a starting point for me. And we talk in dry matter because that's the nutritional component of the plant. Yes, the water is useful, but it's the dry matter content that we use to budget feed. If I click next, this is where I start putting the supply side of the equation in. So for this example, I put in 24 hectares. I've gone round and I've measured it. So you see a picture here of a QMS sward stick, which is freely available from QMS. Measured the grass, and I'm not measuring in centimeters. I'm measuring in kilos of dry matter per hectare, because I can't allocate a centimeter to a ewe, but I can allocate, as you saw earlier, I can allocate 1.4 kilos of dry matter to one ewe. So it's only when I go into measuring it like that, I can start to feed budget it. So I've measured the grass and I put in how much I want to leave behind. And generally, we stick to 1,500 as a starting point, but there's always more information available. And then also importantly, how much I think I'm utilising. So this generally runs from 50 for set stocking to 80 to really good rotational grazing. Okay, so I'm going to stick at 70 to be a bit on the conservative side. So therefore, that tells me that for my mob, I've got 34 days of grazing available. Then I've got two options. I can look into paddock design or I can look at the alternative. I can say how many days I want to graze for and see what mob size would be sustained. So if I click on that one first, again, I've got the same measures I've just put in the previous slide, but I want that area, that grass, to last me 45 days, not 30 days. So if I put that in, it tells me that will actually only sustain 187 ewes. Okay. Alternatively, it gives a bit of information as to how to design your paddocks for rotational grazing. And you've got two options again. You can either say, I want to work to a 2.5 hectare paddock, and that will tell me I need to move them. Oh, it doesn't like the 2.5, 2 hectare paddock. It'll tell me I need to move them every 2.8 days. And I might play around with that because 2.8 days is silly. Or I might say I want to move them every day, and then it'll tell me what sort of paddock size to work to. So I just thought I would just use that quickly and simple way to introduce those of you that aren't familiar with feed budgeting, just to get started with it. Okay, back to my slideshow. Taking it to the next level, what we can do is we can use our grass growth measures. We can use our stocking information, stock weights, stock calving and lambing percentage. We can use any other feeds brought onto the farm to effectively model the supply of grass and the animal demand, and to try and align them as close as possible for a more cost-effective farm system. And we do this using a service provided by SAC, Graze Up, which utilises this software called Farmax, which Jamie will discuss a bit as well. So what it does is it takes the biology of the system alongside the economics to help us work out what is biologically feasible and what is most profitable for any given farm. And what we call this strategic modelling. And by doing this, what we do is we set up what's called a base for the farm. So what represents the farm in the current state. We throw it a load of scenarios that we might like to play around with. And it tells us, will this work on this farm? And will it make me more money? So I've just set up just a bit of an example just to illustrate how this software can help improve the farm sort of setup. And just to explain, this graph is really like kind of the main output of the software. So this green line is the farm average cover. Okay, so for those of you that aren't familiar, so we talk farm average cover, kilos of dry matter to the hectare, but really I think of this as your pasture bank, or it's akin to the silo. Okay, if the farm average cover is going down, I might be running into issues in terms of my pasture supply. This is my gauge of pasture supply through the year. And then the grey line is basically the minimum I can get away with, okay? So the software gets quite angry. If the grey line exceeds the green line, it tells me that strategy is not feasible. And it goes into a whole host of financials as well. So you can look at a full profit and loss of your farm. You put in things like the lamb price, beef price, fertilizer price, wool price. It brings it all into this profit and loss report. So you can really analyze the strengths and weaknesses financially of the farm. It gives you a host of key performance indicators to understand the performance of the farm in different metrics. I can look into depth in terms of the reproduction performance of the farm to understand whether there's scope to improve key areas. So for instance, I've hit on some areas of this example farm, which might be scope for improvement. So for instance, I might take a farm and I might ask the model, can I increase sheep by 25%? I put it into the model and it tells me, no, I cannot. Can I lamb a month later? Tells me, yeah, that's feasible. That works. Can I finish the steers? So before they were sold store? Tells me, yes, that works. How about adding nitrogen plus faster lamb growth? Yep, that works. And how about the above, but with improved lamb weaning percentage? And that works. So I should say this is just for illustrative purposes. Please don't read too much into my examples, but that gives me 4 examples out of 5, which are biologically feasible. So the next question is, which makes more money? Remember, the first one was infeasible, so it's irrelevant how much more money it might make me because it's not going to work on my farm. But looking at the comparison of the full profit and loss, it tells me lambing later will make me that bit more money. So the bottom line is the farm profitability goes up by about 8,000, nearly 9,000 pounds, 8,500. Okay. However, I can do a whole host of things. I can say, how about lambing a month later, applying some nitrogen in the spring, weaning ewes at 100 days, increasing pre-wean growth rates, utilising deferred grazing, housing cattle a month later, wintering ewes on Swedes, a whole host of different things. How will that stack up for my farm? And taking that base farm, applying all that complex mixture of different ideas gives me my idea of the optimized system. It works biologically, and I can see through the model that it will generate more money. So bottom line, 26,500. So that just gives you an idea as to the power of understanding grass and the capability of it and the economics of farming, bringing those two together to understand the most optimal strategy for a business. But I will say, this is all irrelevant if I don't have a full good grasp of what the grass growth is doing. So that's me. Thank you very much. I am going to hand over to Jamie.
One quick question, which I'm going to ask now,
Mhm.
and that is, why do you think dairy grass grows better than livestock or other livestock grass? Is it just that dairy farmers are better farmers?
No. Better land, more nitrogen, probably a bit easier to do paddock grazing on dairy farms, which we know improves pasture growth. Probably fair to say more reseeding. I don't know, maybe the others would like to chip in there, but yeah.
Yeah. And is there the yields for Scotland last year looked pretty impressive?
Yeah.
Within the system, how many of those farms, or within a Grass-Check, how many of them are East Coast farms versus West Coast farms?
It'll be more weighted to the East Coast.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Right. We'll take any other questions later, and I'll pass on to Jamie. So, well, if you want to stop sharing, and Jamie, share your screen.
How's that?
Perfect.
Good. Thank you. I'm Jamie Leslie from up in Shetland. Thanks for asking me to come and talk a wee bit about what we do. Firstly, two apologies. Some of my slides will be quite similar to Poppy's, just similar messages. And the other one is they won't be nearly so professional and polished as hers. So that's my two apologies at the start. That's our farm logos. So we'll just a quick rundown of what we do and where we are. So I always kind of describe ourselves as a very traditional family farm, in that sixth generation here. We've been here for hundreds of years, but I like to think we do things a wee bit differently, as we'll discuss in the coming slides. So yeah, 350 hectares just about owned, and some rented blocks too. 90 suckler cows, and they're all fattened, and we also buy in a batch of heifers to fatten as well, and 900 ewes hogs topped, and we sell a fair chunk of lamb store just to ease for fodder burdens in the early autumn, but we do fatten quite a number now as well for the same butcher shop that takes our fat cattle. A wee bit of spring cereals and various fodder crops that have been developed over the years. So for us, I guess why I'm here is to talk about our forage production systems and how we've changed them and what effect has had on our business, and indeed how technology has helped us do that. It wasn't really something I'd thought about too much. I've thought a lot about the systems and about what changes they've made, but how the actual technology fitted into that. So it's been quite interesting preparing for this and looking back over it. So up until about 6 or 7 years ago, we were very traditional in our approach for the area. Every field gate was open. Cattle and sheep just were everywhere all summer. And then cattle were housed, some for 7 months, some for just a wee bit under 6 months, but a lot of cattle in for a lot of days. And sheep were fed concentrates and just on pretty poor quality grass for quite a portion of their pregnancy over winter. But yeah, just the same reason anybody develops their business. As we expanded and bought a couple of blocks of land, business plans and things like that showed us that we weren't quite doing well enough in terms of profitability, and also just an interest to do better and to see other farmers further south what they were doing has kind of driven us to start looking at things quite differently. So for us, the key areas of where we wanted to get to for our forage and how we fed our animals were pretty simple, really. Early turnout and really quite intense rotation for growing cattle. So that's our finishing steers predominantly, and bull and heifers for the early turnout. Forage crop for pregnant ewes to park up the snacker. Leader follower for breeding stock, so just sheep and lambs in front and suckler cows behind, simple rotational grazing system. Defer grass for dry cows, and to try and cheapen our calf winter. It's all based on, Poppy spoke quite a bit about kilograms of dry matter. Costs us about 5 pence to put a kilogram of dry matter of grass into a cow or a sheep or a lamb. Silage, by the time it's fed out, will be double that. And then if you buy something in a plastic bag from a feed store, it'll be 10 times that. So it really is as simple as utilizing grass better. It really is. That's the whole crux of the matter. The forage crops for calves and ewes is a kind of halfway house between grass and silage. I suppose it's priced, yeah, well, fodder beet will be 6 pence a kilo of dry matter eaten, hopefully this winter. So it's down about the same price as grass. In terms of tech, we've been, and I'm sure lots of people have, there's two messages for tech that kind of came into my mind when I was thinking about this. The first one is, and we've been guilty of it lots of times in the past, it's really, really easy to record data, really easy, whether it's for animals or grass or whatever, but sometimes it's not so easy to actually use that data. So getting your brain in tune as to only recording usable data was quite a big point for me personally. And sometimes you aren't recording lamb growth rates as much as other people are, but if you're not going to get a gain out of that, what's the point? So that's the simplifying of it. But then the other side of it is that simple technology is brilliant because it's easy, but as the Farmax model is, it's the best technology we use here. Brings everything together, but it's complicated. It's hard to set up, especially once you get your head around it, and the monthly maintenance to it isn't too onerous at all, but getting it set up is quite onerous. But sometimes if you want to get a lot out, you just got to put that wee bit more in. So that was kind of my two epiphany moments about technology when I was thinking about this. So same as what Poppy did, we'll start at the beginning with all the different techs that we use. So the demand is what our animals need. So we've got weigh scales, we've got livestock software for that. That tells us how heavy they are, and we can work out how much we want it to grow, and then we can work out how much grass we need. The plate meter, I'll go into each of these in a wee minute. The plate meter tells us how much grass we've got today. Feed budgeting tools brings those two together to show if we've got enough, if we've got too little, too much, whatever. And then the actual infrastructure in field of the troughs and fences, and then the all-encompassing software that is Farmax that brings all those things together, and as Poppy showed, breaks it down into much more detail. So demand, it's very simple. We need to know how much our cows weigh, so we need to know how much their maintenance is. So we've just got Bluetooth weigh head on the crate. It talks to my phone. The scanner stick reader talks to my phone. So we just run cattle through, zap the tags, and that gives us individual weights as they run through. It's not the most sophisticated technology, but it does everything that is required of it. And I also use it for the fattening cattle and other bits and pieces too. So yeah, that is part of our demand, is the maintenance for them. And then we need to decide how fast we want them to grow as well, which I'll talk about in the allocation program in a wee minute. But yeah, that's just simply weighing cattle. The grazing supply, so that's a plate meter. I don't know how many people have seen them, but that's kind of the fancier version of the sward stick that Poppy showed. So all the grazing season, the growing season, sorry, I measure the vast majority of the grazing platform every fortnight. And a lot of people kind of turn their nose up at that, but it's actually quite a good job. You just go for a couple of hours and walk around your fields, and you see a lot of things that you probably wouldn't notice otherwise. So I quite enjoy it. So again, that's Bluetooth, talks to my phone. It just measures the height of the grass underneath that black circle, and it calculates, turns the height into kilograms per dry matter, Bluetooth into my phone. I choose the paddock on the field on my phone as I start the field, and I walk a W across it to get an average farm cover. And then these two screenshots on the right or middle and right hand side of the screen are the software on my phone. So that just very simply is the list of fields, size they are, and then it comes up with the kilograms of dry matter for each field. And then the last is a kind of a feed wedge. So that shows the cover. I just did that yesterday manually. It's not real. It's not what's actually happening here at the moment, sadly, but it just shows the different fields, different covers, and just an idea of what's going on. So that now we know what animals we've got, how heavy they are, and we know how much grass we've got. We can walk the whole farm, get an average farm cover for the whole farm. So that gives us a total feed supply at any one time. And then the feed budget is the kind of fun bit. I haven't used the QMS one just yet, which I'm sorry about, but this is a New Zealand version of the same thing, basically. So yeah, we just, what feed demand we have versus what feed we have available. It's such a powerful thing to have. Once you get your head around it, and once you start doing it, I don't feel comfortable if I don't know this figure all spring and summer and autumn. You can do it in many different ways. You can do it mental arithmetic on a bit of paper with the different apps, with Excel, anything you want, but it is just about really analyzing it and figuring out what you need. The beauty of this one and the QMS app is that when I'm doing my grazing walks, I can take an individual group of animals or an individual unit of land and analyze it on its own, whereas Farmax is kind of more all-encompassing. So this could tell us if we've got enough grass, if we've got too much, and that can then inform your decisions about fertilizer, about selling stock, about just so many different things. It's very hard to really get, it's tricky to describe it all, but once you get into the swing of it, it really is a very powerful tool. When I'm doing it mentally, just if I got my phone with me or anything, we just kind of work on adult cattle for maintenance need about 2% of their body weight per day in dry matter. So a 500 kilo cow would need 10 kilos to maintain her. And then if you want cattle to be growing quite well or lambs to be growing quite well, we'd be kind of allocating 3 to 4%. 4% would be the top end of animals' live weight in kilograms of dry matter per hectare, to give you a rough kind of figure. So that's what we do to allocate the feed. In-field tech, this is kind of, I keep on moving this. This is kind of probably the one that, is it tech? I think it is tech, yeah. That's not me on the bike, by the way. I couldn't find a picture of our bike. But water is probably the biggest stumbling block for rotational grazing. We've got a few different systems. Dad's put in a lot of water troughs, permanent ones, to split fields and things. But when we're doing more intense grazing, especially with young cattle, we use these Agri-Tech troughs, and they're absolutely brilliant. They're really robust, really mobile. You get big ones and little ones, and you just drag them across the ground. So those kind of wee solutions are just, yeah, it just, anything with these kind of technologies and different things and new things, if they're difficult or hard or don't work, I just don't do them. So we do spend, I'd rather spend money on the proper kit and do it really well. Same with the sheep. 3-wire electric fencing manually. These single wires for cattle, we just do manually with a geared reel. But for the sheep fences, we do these 3 lines with a wrap winder, so that winds them up, driven off the quad bike. So again, it's just more kit to make life easier, faster, and just, yeah, it seems a lot of money when you buy it, but once you use it a few times, you realize just how important it is to be good. So yeah, Bobby talked about how much grass is eaten. This field where this trough is in, we did I didn't have those slides up here, but we did a trial on fattening cattle where we set stock them for 6 weeks in that field. And then we put fences up and rotationally grazed them for the next 6 weeks. So it wasn't a perfect trial because it was different. It wasn't at the start of the spring, it was kind of July and August. So it wasn't a perfect trial by any means, but it was a good on-farm trial. I can't remember. I think the growth rate went from 0.97 a day to 1.3 something a day. And we increased the stocking rate because we were utilizing more grass per hectare. And because we were including rest periods in the field, we're also growing more grass per hectare. So just by putting up that actual wire you see in that picture, we more than doubled the kilograms of beef grown per hectare in that field. So spent a bit of money on tech and it certainly worked. Worked really well. The less glitz and green part of the tech that we do, this is our deferred grazing block. So yeah, a huge part of our suckler cows actually being able to be profitable is that they eat grass for 9 months, nothing else but eating grass of one form or another for 9 months. And because of our paddock grazing, because of our grass measuring and a better utilization of grass, then the fields standing behind the cameraman are now in a rotational grazing system. So we don't need these fields all summer anymore. There's more animals on that block. I think output increased by just under 40% in terms of kilograms of live weight grown per hectare because of electric fencing. But then we don't need these fields, so we just let them grow up, as you see, and that's us setting up fences to start eating them early November, or maybe even mid-November. So yeah, that's stripped about 135, 140 pounds per cow out of our cow wintering cost. And again, it's technology and electric fencing and plate meters to measure grass, but it's nothing very fancy, but there's a huge cost saving. So that's it. So yeah, I'm going to go into FarmX now as well, and I'm probably rattling through this too fast, so you'll just have to ask lots of questions at the end. But this is actually our own file on FarmX. This is screenshots from that. So this will kind of give you a picture of where we were in that old production system and the changes we've made and where we are today and into the future. So green is supply, that's how much grass we've got on hand, and the kind of reddy orangey pinky one is how much grass we need to feed our animals. In terms of efficiency and output and profit, the gap here is kind of a wasted opportunity. So that's us. Ignore those dates because this is a historic file. It's a few years before that. That's us pre-changing farming system, and this is us, well, 2 years ago now. And yeah, we maybe wasn't the best autumn or early autumn that year, but just a lot less wastage in the system now, and just aligning those lines much better. And although demand is higher here than supply, we made it through, so it was okay. And then we'll go on to the pasture covers that Poppy showed you as well. But the blue dots are grass measures that I've actually gone out and done with the plate meter. So sometimes in the early spring, when you're a little bit hopeful, you go out a bit more regular. And then, yeah, this is just that's all the grass measuring that I do. So it's not that intensive in terms of, it's not a weekly chore for me at all. It's really just ideally every fortnight. The green shaded line is where we'd like to be. We think that's where we should be. And this just shows where we were 2 and a bit years ago. But knowing this, like so this up here, we can decide to keep another couple of 100 store lambs knocking around for a wee bit longer if we want to add a bit of value to them, because we know we've got this surplus of grass. And the same here, if you can see we're starting to go just slightly wrong, we can go and apply a couple of tons of nitrogen, or we could in 2020 when it was cheap, and react to that. So there's lots of things that knowing these figures and knowing where we want to be can affect our day-to-day farming decisions, which the next slide will show you a bit more. So that was 21, and we dried out quite a wee bit there in our kind of lighter soil. So we did struggle for grass, and we started to see that. But here, we couldn't do a lot. We weaned our ewe hogs earlier, so that freed up a wee bit of grass, but not a lot. But we couldn't really wean ewes then. It was just too early. But we did wean them here, just right at the end of July. And then another grass measure into the early August, and you think, geez, this is still not right. So at that point, every ewe with dental issues went, the cull cows got weaned and went. We put on a wee bit of autumn nitrogen. And because we knew that, we grew more grass than the average for that time of year, and it just saved us to get us through. So simply by having this software, having a plate meter, there's 2 or 3 decisions kind of just save that autumn. But equally here, when we saw we were really rocketing, we cut nitrogen there because we thought, oh, that'll keep going and we'll be way up here. But obviously, between me not putting nitrogen on and the weather gods upset the great schemes. The next one is quite a big driver for Pharmax and how it can work is your grass quality. So again, this is 2017 actual year of the previous slide with the supply and demand. So green is green leaf, brown is dead, and yellow is stem. So this is us before any grazing system changes, and you can see quite a bit of stem, so not really very edible, and quite a bit of dead grass. And just when our deferred grass isn't in this, this is our growing grass, this is our main grazing platform. But just by keeping those supply and demand lines in check a wee bit more and just controlling the grass, we've grown more grass, we've grown more beef and lamb, we've used less fertilizer, but part of that is just higher quality grass throughout the season. And then some things on the important stuff. So before we made any changes to our system, our output, this is a live weight output, not a dead weight output, was 377 kilograms per grazed hectare. This year is actually last year. Yeah, it was last year, or 21 it will be actually, so that should be 2021. We're up to 485. So just with those few technology changes we've made that I showed you, it's 28% increase in output. And 547, I think we'll be over 500 this year. We won't get to 547, but I'd hopefully be about 520 somewhere. So not quite doubled output per hectare, but have close to that at the same time as reducing ewe concentrates by 3/4 and reducing cow wintering costs by 135 quid a cow. So it's not that we've bought the extra output, we've just grazed grass better, we've allocated grass, we've utilized grass better, and we've allowed it to rest, to recover. And then we've used Pharmax to show us what we've done and how far we can go. And it's really as simple as that. And that's sunset. So I think I'm finished.
Thank you, Jamie. That was spot on, and I think it really does highlight where a little bit of technology and a little bit of measurement and management can certainly increase output significantly. 28% is a big amount just in the start, and still more to go, which is good. And I think your comment on not buying the output's really prudent, especially the way things are at the moment, because that would cost a serious, well, in mainland it would cost a serious amount of money. So with you guys it would be it'd be even worse, like. And so no, I'm just checking on any questions. There's just take one quick question just now. Have you thought about any or looked at any technology to automate the kind of measuring of the grass to make that a bit easier rather than walking? Or do you think there's a benefit from just taking that time to do it?
There's two. There's the ones you can tow behind your bike that trail the ground, the kind of sledge type ones. we've got quite a lot of small fields, so I think it'd be a bit of a pain having to open gates, and I'm probably just as fast jumping over fences and the like. So I know bigger farms use them and got on well with them, but I think that's a bit too much for us. We trialed the satellite measuring one and didn't get on very well with that at all.
Okay. Yeah.
That's as politely as I can put that, I think.
Good. I think we'll move on at that point. I think we'll come back to it again. If anybody's got any questions, just pop them in the Q&A, and we'll try and get to them at the end. So thank you for that, Jamie. We'll just pass across to Ross. You want to share your screen, Ross?
Is that it sharing? Can you see
Perfect. That? Yeah, spot on. Thank you.
I'll try and put everyone back on the good side of the satellite app for measuring sward in a minute. Evening, everybody. I'm Ross Robertson from Head of Mixed Farming from Agri-EPI Centre. I'm the Head of Mixed Farming for Agri-Technology. For those of you who don't know me, I'm actively involved with the Opportunity North East project for the Management Committee. So it's quite an interesting project, but I'm there to advise on what I'm about to speak about tonight, technologies that are commercialised. For those of you who don't know who Agri-EPI Centre are, we are a partly funded government organisation, part of the 4 Agri-Tech centres in the UK, who help SMEs and farmers alike get investment and funding to manufacture right the way through the R&D stage, right through to commercialisation, any technology that will aid farmers and also in aquaculture, to make data collection tools to obviously help aid them make decisions. And as Jamie mentioned as well, is obviously it's very easy to collect the data nowadays on your farm, but it's how you implement that data into your decisions and how you actually use that data, because data and information are 2 different things. And that's one of the questions we get quite a lot. Just go to the next slide. So I'm going to briefly talk about Rumi, which is a satellite grass sward measurement app that has been around quite a while now. Very good app. I actually use it myself at home for our grass measurements. I don't have a sward plate meter, so I use the Rumi app. Very simple to use. It's a free app with add-ons that you can purchase. What you do is you map out your field. I'll just go on to the next one. So you map out your field, as you can see here, and it automatically measures via satellite the kilograms of dry matter per hectare in that field. But just to go back to the accuracy side of things, we actually tried it, my neighbour and I tried it just to see how accurate it was, and it was within 5 kilos of dry matter a hectare from the plate meter to the app. So we were quite happy with how accurate it was. And when I told Rumi, they were very happy with that as well, because they do appreciate they have had their issues at the start, but as the app's grown stronger, and the more data they can collect back from farmers offering up their sward measurements from their plate meters, that allows them to improve their app. So technology companies like this that are bringing new technology to the market need your feedback as well. So as much as you're collecting the data, it's good to hand the data back to them as well, because they can then help improve the app, and it makes it better for you as a farmer and the user. So then the app, once you've got your fields mapped out, it'll tell you exactly the same as what the other tools are showing you as well, but it's actually showing you in a map form. You can manage your livestock in the field, say the weight of the cow, the steer, the ewe, the ram, the hog. It's in the field, and it'll tell you how much dry matter is required for that animal per day. And then obviously it'll measure how many days you've got left till you need to move that for your rotational grazing system. Very simple to use, and available both on iOS and Android. Excuse me. And this is just a bit of a clearer image of the mapping you can see on the app itself. And obviously you get every animal group you set up and the numbers you set up in it. And this just shows you exactly that's the post-grazing target, and that's how many days is left in the rotation. Colour, square for each animal group you set up. Very, very simple to use. I can't keep saying that. It is very simple. If you've not got a plate meter, try it. It'll honestly help you a lot. You can, obviously, as it says there, it helps you avoid overgrazing, and you can maximise what you've got there. As Poppy said earlier, you need to utilise what you've got. Cost of fertiliser, etc. Cost of production for your grass. You should be treating it like a crop as much as you would love to, but the cost of production is up. But if you can utilise what you've already got there using apps like this, your plate meters, etc., it will make a massive difference, and you can be feeding the animals exactly what they're needing in concentrate if you are using concentrate, which then can obviously extend your grazing season. I'll briefly move on to plate meters. So I've chosen to speak about TrueTest. Reason I've chosen to speak about TrueTest is because I'm actually looking at purchasing some for our satellite farms. So to give you an idea of what we're doing with our satellite farms, we are going right back to the basics, right back to the ground level, looking at our soils right the way up. Soils is obviously going to be the next webinar, so I'll just put that in there for everybody as well. But this one's grass. But we are going to be measuring everything from the start so we can benchmark and take everything from there, looking at obviously what's in our soil, the way it's managed, what we're using fertilizer, digestate, liquid slurry, pelletized slurry, whatever we use to put on the grass, and we can measure this. So TrueTest offer 3 options in plate meter. So you've got the EC09, so that's an electronic plate meter, and it automatically records each reading and displays the number of samples you've taken for that field, and it's just shown on the screen on the plate meter itself. EC10, which is the one pictured, I'm just going to get my notes, sorry. The EC, and just for prices, because I know a lot of you will ask that in the question and answer, the price of the basic one's about the £560 mark, roughly, before that. The EC10, the one pictured, as the number suggests, the higher the number, the more further on it is in its commercialization and more stuff that's available with it. So it automatically records each reading, displays the number of samples taken, but it can store data for the amount of paddocks, for up to nearly 100 paddocks as well. So you can continually just go out measuring, and then you can actually go back to that paddock another time and measure it against what you've got from that last one. And all the data from that one is downloadable straight to your PC using a USB cable. And then that goes back to what Jamie was saying as well about it's easy to take the data off and how do you use it. But because you're then putting onto your computer, it's right in front of you, exactly where you want it to be. That one there is about the £675 mark. So a little bit more expensive, but it does have a bit more in it. And I would say that one's probably the best value for money out of the 3. The last one we've got on there is the EC20 Bluetooth. So this one actually works through an app on your phone, and it can actually, if you unlock it correctly, pay a little bit extra, you can actually unlock it to do GPS tracking as well. So you can actually measure the same place in the field every time. So you're not just taking random spots across the field. So that'll allow you to actually take measurements and look at it from the last time it was measured. That one works exactly the same way as the other 2, but this one obviously has the app. The app is only available on Android. That's one thing I'll say about a lot of technology now. Android phone seems to be the way to go because a lot of companies are really struggling to get Apple to take their apps because you have to pay quite a bit of money for them. This one obviously can be Bluetooth to the app on your phone, which then becomes a management tool, which can also be downloaded by CSV file onto your computer or Excel. So therefore, you've got an integration between all the different platforms you can work with. And I know one of the questions is going to be, will it speak to other programs? It speaks via Excel at the moment. This is the biggest question we have in farming just now in technology, is not everybody's apps speak to each other. But most, if not all, will allow you to download a CSV or an Excel document. That one, price-wise, is about the £890 mark, £900 mark. So it is a bit more expensive, but the accuracy is available with that one, because obviously you can GPS track it you're measuring. The next thing that I think is a big benefit, and I've actually purchased them for our farms in the satellite network, is the no fence grazing collars. Very new to the market. Well, it's been on the market a couple of years in Norway, in their home country. They've moved across here now. No Fence are grown as a company quite dramatically. They are a GPS locator collar that will allow you to track your animals in the field, but you can also set up an imaginary boundary in your field that will allow the animals to just only graze in that area. So basic setup from the start, download you'll obviously purchase the collars, download the No Fence app. What they ask you to do is just make sure all the batteries are charged fully before you put them in the animal. You can then go onto the app and change each serial number on the collar to your animal's either management number or their UK legal number. You then put the collars on the animal, and then you start to train the animals in the paddock or the field that you're putting them in. So the best way to do it is if you're putting them into a rotational grazing setup and you do have the electric fences already there, and then you set the boundary about 5 meters back from the electric wire. The way the collar then works is, it'll be on the next slide actually, just briefly. It works on a varying high-pitched sound that ranges from a really, it's still a high pitch but not loud, and it keeps going up in pitch, 8 levels, and it's quite quickly. And what you'll actually see the animal do is they'll come up to the imaginary boundary, the pitch of noise will start playing out of the collar, the animal 9 times out of 10 will turn around. That some animals will take longer to train on the collars, but we're just setting them up on our one of our herds just now, predominantly Aberdeen Angus, and they reckon about 5 to 7 days, and those animals, that herd that we've put the collars on, will be fully trained to the collar after 5 to 7 days, which is quite quick for something that's really new to them and not something that's physical in front of them. Just going back to the noises and the level. So if the animal walks through the boundary, the imaginary boundary on the app, and it has 8 high-pitched sounds, if it doesn't respond and come back into the area, it'll get a small electric shock, and then hopefully that should turn the animal around. It's quite interesting what you see in the app and how your different animals act in the herd. You will get some animals that will just continually graze right around the outside of the boundary, and that's all they do, and they'll have sound warnings all the time, but they just try the boundary all the time, but they're still continually grazing. And then you get others that will just be in the middle grazing, or just quite happy. You get 2 different sizes of collar, one for a bull, one for a cow, but you only put it on the adult animals, which is obviously because the calves should then stick with their mothers. That's my last slide. Mine's quite short because the technology is there, but I know there'll be a lot of questions on the no fence collars, and I know we're short on time as well. So thank you very much, everybody, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Ross. Spot on. A good kind of review of some of the other bits and pieces that there is on the go at the moment that is helping with utilisation of grass anyway, and helping with some of these more kind of grazing, some of these more remote areas that have been tricky to graze because of the capital cost of fencing. So, all right. Kirsten, you'll maybe just help me here a little bit, but we've got a few questions here. If anybody's got any other questions, then please fire them in. Few have been answered as we've gone along, but one question from Peter Beattie was for Jamie is, how did you get the skills to understand the information, Jamie? How have you? There's obviously been a lot of stuff that you've kind of had to upskill a bit yourself on to be able to interpret the data and work with it.
Yeah, in terms of grass measuring and things, it's really just talking to other farmers and doing similar to what they've done in terms of grazing heights and things like that. Whether in terms of the farm acts, it's really the benchmarking group that Poppy looks after for us, and the knowledge, well, her Poppy keeping us right and telling us what to do, and then just share knowledge with those other farmers on in that wee group, I suppose. And I can remember the feeling when we started rotational grazing about how daunting it was about starting to think about cover heights and all these things. But when you start realizing that how much benefit it has, it's not a difficult thing to learn. It's not really, there's not that much to it once you get your head around it a wee bit. And yeah, it just becomes part of your daily chore, I suppose, of figuring out what covers you've got. Not daily chore, but you notice it as you go around, even just on your checks per day. So yeah, it's just nothing. I didn't go on any training courses or anything like that. Really, was just, yeah, it's really just getting on with it. It's just starting something and just doing it, I suppose, is the main thing.
Just over time, you start getting your eye in a little bit as to what things look like and how.
Yeah, we're quite conscious not to get your eye in too much and rely on that for pasture covers too much, and still use the plate meter pretty religiously, because you can, depending on your demeanor and personality, you can overestimate if you're a positive person, or you can underestimate if you're not. So I think it's important to keep using the technology, even though you've been at it for a wee while. Yeah, but it seems, yeah, I don't know. We had a sword stick to begin with, and I couldn't get on with that in terms of it just seemed to take too long writing stuff down. So then we moved to the Bluetooth plate meter with the app, and it just takes the hassle and the recording out of it. So and it is, yeah, it's just it's a technology record or information or whatever you want to call it, a data set that is so useful to us. And once you realize the worth of something, it's pretty easy to get enthusiastic about it.
Jamie, how much time do you think it takes you extra from measuring to not measuring to measuring?
Well, a grass measures, I can do it in a comfortable one would be 2 hours a fortnight. Farmax takes quite a lot of hours to set up initially, but in terms of maintaining it, half an hour a month, I would say, could maintain it. If you want to do the modeling and the looking into the future and the analysis, obviously that's how long is a piece of string. But in terms of the maintaining it, once you've got your head around it, I would say half an hour a month is it tends to be an hour and a half every third month for me sometimes, Poppy. I'm sorry, but yeah, no, it's not bad. And as I said, when the measuring the grass, I mean, weighing animals and things, we're fattening cattle and we're fattening lambs, so that kind of doubles up. And in terms of knowing weights of cows and ewes, it's such a powerful thing for not just driving the software, but for knowing condition scores and taking a weight at the same time. And we cull cows on condition score that we take when we're weighing them as well. So it kind of, you can't really allocate all the time involved in weighing animals to this kind of stuff, because it's beneficial for other parts of the business anyway. But yeah, I would say 2 hours could do a grass measure, and half an hour a month maintains Farmax, I would say. And because of the app, and once you get to use it, I mean, if I don't need to set out individual mobs rotations and work out feed budgets, then I just get an all farm cover and put that into Farmax, and then that's it done. If I'm working out feed budgets for a group of 40 cows or 200 ewes, it takes me 2 minutes as I'm standing in the field with the app. It takes no time at all.
Good. No, it is, we're a shorter time, so it's good to have some of these things that can, using the data is easy, but it's making the process easy is really important.
Yeah.
Couple of questions for Ross. Does the no fence collars give any behavioural kind of analytics as well, kind of in the data that it's gathering?
But at the moment, the only behaviour thing you're seeing is actual through the GPS tracking. So that's just at the moment, but I know they are working on a lot of other stuff to bring the product forward. Because I mean, it is a really, really good product. And just to give you the idea of what we're actually going to be doing, as well as doing rotational grazing with it, is we're actually going to try it on fodder. So moving the strip fence every 10 metres, but we're only going to allow them to have 3 metres when we move them, and just see how active and how reactive to the collar the animals actually are. So that's something we're just trying, just to try it, just a simple thing. And then when we're doing a rotational, we've got a 40-acre field. Instead of splitting into 4, we're just going to split it into 2. And then obviously, if they do go through the fence, they're still in that 20-acre instead of a 10-acre. They're not getting out the whole field.
Good. Just a couple other things. It does when the collar gives a bit of a shock when it actually goes past the point. Does the animal get a shock on the way back as well?
No, just on the way out.
So it's a one way.
Yeah, just the one way. So you would hope, and I hope, I've not seen it working yet, but I would hope that when the shock does happen, as they do with electric fences, they normally stamp and turn about. So, yeah, the sound seems to work really well. I have seen the animals respond at the sound, but I have not physically seen the electric shock yet. Yeah,
good. What is the cost of a no fence collar?
I knew that was coming. If
Roughly.
everyone's seated, they're about £240 a collar for the cattle ones. But value for money, I mean, they do reckon 5-year battery life out of them as well. So providing they do work, you can't. I mean, it is an expensive capital to purchase, but we're looking into buying more, just because we see the potential in the product. We've bought 100, so.
Good. Right, I'm just trying a few more.
There's another one there for Ross as well about does the whole herd have to have them on, or can you get off with a proportion of the, say it's cattle with them on? Is it a bit of a kind of leader follower behaviour?
They do suggest to put it on all the adult animals in the herd or in the group, but you would have to put it on all of the adult animals, because if you get one that starts wandering, you know, it's like with sheep will start following others. Cattle will do it as well. They'll just, once the electric shock happens, they'll just keep going. So yeah, you do have to put it on all the adults.
Good question for Jamie. Do you recalibrate your plate meter for each season?
The actual physical plate meter gets recalibrated every time it's used in terms of measuring the height.
Yeah.
The equation that we've got for turning the height into kilograms of dry matter, we just leave that so that we can compare year on year. I know some people take dry matter readings and recalibrate for that, but for beef and sheep, for us, I kind of feel that 80% of the gain is measuring grass, and the extra, or 90% of the gain, is just in measuring the grass reasonably accurately. And I don't think we're going to achieve that much by measuring dry matter and changing equations, personally. I think you just tie yourself in knots.
Yeah.
And measuring the deferred grazing, we don't measure it as such. I've tried to before. It's about 45% dry matter. Because we did do a quality analysis on that a few years ago. So obviously a plate meter wouldn't be terribly accurate on that, but it's dry cows, and it is what it is. We can't make it anymore. It just grows, so it is what it is. And they eat it till they finish it, and then we leave them for a day, and then we move them. And cows are pretty robust, so they can take up the slack.
Good. I think we've covered most of that questions now, unless there's any more for anybody.
Poppy, there was a question in there asking about the QMS grazing calculator. Somebody asking if you could show us it again. I wonder if you could maybe pop the link for that into the chat for folk, if you've got it there still in your browser, so that people can have a play themselves, because it's freely available to use, isn't it?
I'm on mute. Yeah, I've just put it in the chat, and the one Jamie showed as well. I'll try and find that and put that in the chat as well.
Feedsmart.co.nz.
Yeah,
I can put it in.
A question on Farmax for Daniel Robertson was does Farmax work with silage, or how does it work in a silage for planning and forecasting quality, things like that? Can it be used for that?
For forecasting quality, no. But what it does, so Farmax is really the main sort of strength of it is the graze grass, the stuff that we really struggle to manage and predict. And what you do is say throughout the season, Jamie was showing nicely his sort of predictions, and what you could say is if we're predicting to have quite a surplus of grass, then what we do is to say, oh, we might take more out for silage, and that might improve the quality of the graze grass going forward, and yeah, still remain feasible whilst putting more silage in stocks. So it's more on the grass side. It requires our knowledge of general, when I cut it and what that means for quality. Yeah, on that side of it, I would say.
Yeah. Because
you can analyze and change your quantity and quality of silage in the file, like what you've got on hand, but you need to know that information. It doesn't predict it for you.
Yeah.
But you can input it.
Yeah.
For doing like finishing, I like productivity at finishing on silage or something. You need to see if the analysis of the silages to then be able to do that. I suppose what it does, the stuff that you showed us was on the full grazing platform, but within that there is actually the paddocks as well, which will then give you the ability to say that one's running away, so we can shut it off and silage it, which might fit with what Daniel was asking.
No, it's more at a whole farm level. There is a bit of sort of ability to go into the sort of different blocks, but it's more at a whole farm level. Is quality getting away from me at the whole farm level? And that gives me understanding as to whether cutting silage will benefit that. There
is tools for doing what I think you're meaning, like Agri-Net would analyze grass on a per paddock basis really intensely, and it's used quite a lot, especially on dairy farms in the UK. But that's one of the things that I tried to do, and I did do for a year or so, but I was putting all the information of animals and grass and fields and where animals were into it, but I was never going back and looking and taking anything out of the program. So I wasn't achieving anything. So that's one of the things that I talked about right at the start of my presentation.
There's also John Deere do have or manufacture technology that can be moved about from machine to machine as well. So it's the John Deere Harvest Lab. So you can actually monitor the silage as it goes into the clamp and the quality of it. And then you can, when you've got the clamp open again, you can actually test the silage as it's coming out for quality. And then you can also put it onto your slurry spreader to do variable rate through the whole one box, so the whole Harvest Lab. It's quite interesting. It's really, really accurate as well. But it's just the cost of it is something to make you fall over at the moment until it becomes more of a forward thinking commercialized product. Sorry.
One other question for Poppy and maybe Jamie as well is forage crops on Farmax. Do you enter them in, or how are they dealt with in the Farmax situation?
It's ideal for stuff like that, because with a forage crop, we don't often account for the fact that, it's great in the winter, but there's loss of land in the spring. So you put that into Farmax, I've got a fodder beet crop in, that means that land is out from mid-May, right, for over a year. So that sort of area lost out my grazing platform is accounted for, and I put in the predicted yield and feed that when I need it. And then I might go back and also, once I've done my sort of cut and weighs and things, put in what the actual yield was, and then the analysis and prove the actual quality was. So yeah.
Yeah, can handle that, no problem. Good, good. Well, I think we're just about getting to the end of the questions. I think we've answered most of them, I think. So I'm just going to fire one last question in. What is the one bit of kit that you think should be on every farm or every livestock farm at the moment? And I'll go Jamie first.
Electric fences.
Poppy?
Go Ross next.
Go on then, Ross.
That's not fair. I work with so many different ones. I think a plate meter, actually, because it can that data coming off of that can help make you make so many decisions on the farm, through feeding, etc. Your rotational grazing, how much you've got left, if you've got enough, etc. I think plate meters, and for the cost of them, could save you a lot of time and money as well over the long run.
Poppy?
I'm going to go good water infrastructure, water troughs and things like that, just to help divide the paddock up more.
Good. No, I think that's 3 top tips, isn't it? Really, the things that folks should really be thinking about is it's kind of the basics of technology, or the enablers of other bits of technology on the back of that. So, so I'd just like to thank all you guys for taking the time to come and speak to us tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed chairing it. It's been really interesting to hear about your setup, Jamie, and some of the things that you've developed over the last few years, and really transformed your business with the sounds of things on the back of that. So no, that's been really good. There'll be lots more to come for the ONE Agritech programme in the next few months. There's a newsletter going to be coming out which will keep up to date with the farm. Lots of other things happening, so we will circulate that as things go along. But I'd just like to thank everybody for coming tonight. Big turnout, which is really encouraging to see, and hopefully you've come away with some top tips that you'll be able to utilise on farm. And by all means, tell us about the stories if you do take up some of the things that you've heard of tonight, because that's really what this programme is all about. So thank you all. Safe journey home, or enjoy a cup of tea and a biscuit now, and we'll see everybody another time. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.